What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Existential Stoic podcast. Do you ever have difficulties being honest with others, with yourself? Do you ever find yourself lying just so you don't have to deal with problems in the world or face yourself? Who knows? I mean, honesty can be difficult. So today we're going to talk about the problems with honesty on this episode. I'm Danny, and my buddy Randy. What's up, Randy?
Yo, Danny.
Yeah, what do you think about honesty? Do we think about it enough, or do we focus on it enough? I mean, is it important?
It's a big topic. So one of the reasons that I brought it up was a lot of books on finance. They've done interviews with some of the wealthiest people in the world, and the one trait that they all have in common is a very high level of integrity. So like being honest with themselves, being honest with other people. And then I actually just finished reading a book called The Way of Integrity by Martha Beck. And it's about, it relates Dante's Inferno to dealing with honesty, which is really awesome. Yeah. And then I also had I had a moment of recognition with like how important personal honesty is. So I figured all of those reasons are good reasons to talk about it. But to answer your question, I think that we lie all the time.
Yeah, I think we're doing the easiest. It's funny too because the easiest person to lie to is ourselves. Sorry, what were you saying?
Yeah, it's just like every time somebody says "How you doing," we're all like, "Fine." It's like we're lying. We're literally lying nonstop every day.
Either just to be polite or so you don't have to engage. I know it is funny. We do lie constantly. It's interesting too. You brought it up because I was reminded too. Like Nietzsche says time and time again in his books too. Like he touts the importance of honesty, that it should be like the most important virtue, that is like and really I think he meant principally being honest with ourselves first, because it's so easy to lie to ourselves, and it's so easy to convince ourselves about things that aren't what we want, aren't what we value, are inconsistent with who we think we are or who we imagine ourselves being. And whenever we do that, that just takes us further away from a good life and living the life we want. So I think honesty's got to be a crucial part if we're gonna be happy.
Okay, so I have to tell a little bit of a story, and
all right,
it's always easier to see these things in other people than it is in yourself. So that's why like this is such an illuminating example for me. But basically, there was this person who I used to interact with, and he started doing things that basically are illegal. And I confronted him about it, and I said, if you do that anymore, we just can't hang out. That's not something that somebody I hang out with does. And I tried to like convince him that this probably isn't good. Like, it's not great to do these things. And it went along the lines of, would you do this to your friends or family? No, of course not. What if somebody did this to you? I wouldn't want that at all. And it's like, okay, so why are you doing this to other people? And he's like, yeah, because I don't know them. It doesn't matter. And so there was a very clear disconnect, and it was kind of because the person that he looks up to the most, his business success mentor, is basically a giant con man. He's made an absolute fortune just ripping people off. And that's the model that he wants his life to go, because he sees that this mentor has a great life for himself and his family. Meanwhile, this person that I used to associate with, he's having nightmares every night. His relationships keep falling apart, and he can't understand why women just like don't understand. So like all these like red flags, indicators that like you're living a dual life, and people see that, and no wonder your life is falling apart. But like I said, it's easier to see it in somebody else than it is to see it in yourself. But this is just like a very relevant example for me for why integrity is so important, because being honest with yourself, being honest with other people is it's the best policy, so they say.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, you got to sleep with yourself every night, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, I think that's a great example too, though, because I think it also shows how hard it is sometimes, because, he's got this like, it's clear he's got a conflict going on where on the one hand, he sees like, I guess his mentor, made really fast money, probably, made a lot of money, didn't have to do maybe as much work or whatever. I don't know. You don't have to come up with new ideas maybe or something. But so on the one hand, maybe it seems like easy, somebody he respects or whatever is doing it. So he's got all these reasons to kind of justify it to himself, but at the same time, knowing it's completely wrong, knowing it's problematic, and trying to still do it, it's like really a recipe for failure. Yeah. Or for other problems at least, right?
Yeah. And like another thing that I was another thought that I was having with this whole thing was like, he's like, I would never want this stuff to happen to my friends or family. And I'm thinking the only way to guarantee that this will happen to your friends and family is by doing it yourself.
Yeah.
Because like if the world is just going to do what we do, then if we would never do that, then the world will never do that. But if we do it, then we're just going to proliferate it in the world. So it's some crazy stuff. So I think that's a very vivid example that just helps me remind me why being honest and living a life of integrity is very important.
I actually love what you just said too, though, because that's one of the principal ways in which I think we lie to ourselves about the importance of being a good person and about why it's important to be the person we see ourselves as being. Because, if we do things, that makes it part of the world. And the only way for all those things to stop is for all of us to stop doing it. Whatever it is, whether it's like, you want a better environment, you want people to not cheat each other, everybody has to do their part, and they have to, have those values. So it's like, if you do it, you're guaranteeing it's going to happen to people that you know and love because you're making it part of the world. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's a good one. Like that.
And I think that's probably why real successful people, integrity is something that they have in common. Because when you start modeling integrity, when you be somebody that other people want to spend time with, when you be somebody that other people want to do business with, it's like, no wonder good things come your way.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too. When I think of success too, I think of, I do think of like, obviously like a successful life in the sense of like, having the means to do what you want, having that freedom, the ability, whatever, But I also think of it as like, success in the sense of like good character, happy, well-being, good relationships. And I think that requires honesty if you want both of those. Yes, like your friend, right? You can get to sort of the money maybe through, horrible means, but it doesn't mean you're going to have success in the broader sense of like a good life. You're going to have other problems, things that might come back and catch up with you later, like you said, relationships, so I think this is one of the things why honesty is so important too, because it's about being the person we are or want to be and really doing it and taking responsibility for ourselves. I think that's what's so hard about honesty though, because we so often want to, shirk responsibility because then that, it means we have to face ourselves and be honest.
Well, also another really difficult part with honesty is there's not like one truth. It's unfortunate, but there's just not. Like I remember when I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, he was like very, very intent on having everyone understand the truth. But from my interpretation, it seemed like he wanted everyone to understand his truth. And he ran into a lot of issues because of that. And like, for instance, every time I tell somebody that I used to be a veterinarian and I don't do that anymore, they're always blown away. They're like, how could you not do that? That's the greatest job on the planet. And I'm like, it didn't resonate with me. It wasn't my truth. Like killing thousands of animals, even though it was compassionately through euthanasia, that just didn't resonate with my heart and my soul. Like, I don't care. And so doing whatever I had to do to get out of that profession was worthwhile. But it's like understanding that truth, because other people, being a veterinarian is their truth. And that's like them being honest with themselves, but it's being honest with yourself and figuring out what that is with yourself.
It's funny, the vet that I go to now, I could not imagine this guy being anything but a vet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, I think like, unfortunately, you just realized after the fact that it wasn't really right for you. But I think, there's nothing wrong with the profession itself. It's a good field. It is. But like, it's got to be right for you or it's just never going to work. You're never going to fit in it, and I think you didn't. You obviously didn't, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's something it can be hard to admit, though. And that's even a time that's hard to be honest with ourselves when we're doing something that even might, from outside looking in, might look good. But if it's not right for us, it's not good for us. And so it doesn't matter. And that's a hard thing to admit. I think people find that all the time because it means, one, the difficulty of changing everything, dealing with those questions, dealing with people saying like, how did you do that? And it's like, well, it didn't work, and it's funny, but I don't know. Honesty is tough though, because it is a big topic, because there's so many ways in which we lie to ourselves. We lie to ourselves about our values, about what's important. We lie to ourselves about what we're doing, why we're doing it. I think this is one of the tricky things about being honest, is about having really a clear idea of really our truth, our reasons for doing things, and why things are meaningful. But like you said, since there is no one sort of objective standard truth, it does make it hard, because it makes it easy, I guess, maybe to lie. It makes it easy to lie to ourselves, because there's always a way to say, well, oh, maybe this is it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, whatever, and convince ourselves otherwise.
Yeah, it's like you don't want to fool yourself, and you're the easiest person to fool. And this was one thing that I was thinking about when I was having this moment of revelation about personal integrity. Like we all convince ourselves that we're like honest people. I'm pretty sure that most people would think that they're pretty honest person. But it's like these times when we don't hold ourselves accountable. That was what I was really thinking about with these times of lacking honesty with ourselves. Like there's this book that I'm reading called Endure, about this guy who's like a bow hunter, and like he runs a marathon a day. It's like crazy, insane stuff. But like,
hate those people.
But they definitely raise this standard for everyone else. But it's like,
I'm all proud of myself for like walking 3 miles. He's like running almost 30.
Right. But it's like,
sorry.
It's like the having the accountability to hold himself to doing that every day, whether he's sick, whether he didn't sleep at all and he's feeling terrible, whether it's raining, whether like all these things. And these are areas where it really separates the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. We're like, and it's like, am I the type of person who's going to do this because I said I'm going to do it? Or am I going the type of person who's going to do this because it's convenient right now, and then I'm going to stop when it's not? Like
and as soon as I have an excuse, I'm taking the excuse, right? Like,
and those are the times when you're able to deceive yourself so easily. And I'm talking from personal experience. When it's not comfortable, when it's terrible, that's when you're like, but it's just a little bit more comfortable not to do it. Maybe I didn't really want to do it. Yeah.
Hey, this is the first step to honesty, is admitting that we literally all do that. Because I do that too, and it's hard. But I think this is what's so hard about being honest too, is that like, if you really, like, we all like to think we're honest, like you said, but like if you really think about it, being truly honest is a very high bar. It means taking responsibility for everything. It means admitting to yourself literally like what's going on, instead of sugarcoating it and providing the illusion or the fantasy that makes it more comfortable and more convenient. And I think that's, there's so many times you can think of, I don't know how many times, even when I was just in school, where like I gave myself excuses, like I didn't feel good that day or something, or whatever. And like you justify it after you've already decided that you're not going to do something, and I don't know. It's just, there's so many ways in which we do trick ourselves and lie to ourselves, that being honest is hard. It's really hard. And I think it's just, at least for me, the first part, I think one of the initial things you have to do is you have to start at least being honest with yourself, in the sense of recognizing what you're doing, being like self-aware with the kind of mental logic and reasons you're using when you're acting, and recognizing, is it just because I don't feel like it, or I'm being lazy, or what is the real motivation?
Yeah. It's a helpful thing that I incorporated, and sometimes I actually do, is
I know, dude. It's like, it's so funny all the
time. Like those moments when there's something that I said I was going to do that I don't feel like doing, and I'm trying to justify in that moment whether I should give it up or whether I shouldn't. I just say, okay, I'll do it today, and then tomorrow I can decide.
That's a good idea.
Because it's usually just today that I don't feel like doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like really
wait to see how your attitude is.
Yeah. But that's
well,
but that's when it's so easy to decide, because then you can be like, you know what, I didn't really want that. And then you get the whole like easy thing. It's like, oh, clearly
Yeah.
I didn't want it, but like you actually wanted it because you committed to it up front.
Yeah. Well, this is where it's tricky too, though, I think, because there's also cases where like we commit to things that we really don't want to do. And like there's also times, and I know for a fact it's happened to you not that long. And I mean, there's also times when we commit to like we identify obligations maybe from because of others that we don't really want or don't really, and I think those are times too where you have to say no, honestly say no. And it's hard too to do that. But this is what makes it so hard, I think, because it's like, it's so easy to go the other way. You know what I mean? When we want to, when it's convenient or when it's easy for us to lie to ourselves and make it.
Well, those are some of the hardest times because you've got the pit in your stomach, you've got the cold sweat, and you're like, I know that like being honest means that I have to do this thing, but like you're literally every inch of your being is like terror. And then once you
Yeah.
address that, once you do that, then it all lets go and it feels great. But like, yeah, like you said, we had this type of thing a few weeks ago, and it was like,
Well, I think it's funny. I think too, like if you're like, I mean, I think if you are honest, right, that weight is lifted off of you because you don't have the stress that you're carrying around of, one, not doing what you should be doing, or lying to people or lying to yourself. I think there is this like weight that's lifted. But the really difficult problem is I think we're really all short-sighted. Most of us are very short-sighted, right? We're focused on really like a very small window of time. And that's like, it's like when you feel like, depressed or something, you imagine, or in a panic attack, you imagine it's going to last forever. This is what life is now, right? Like when in fact, that's totally not the case. And it's probably like, yeah, the next hour might be like this, but it's not going to be like this for the next 20 years or something. So, we have a really, I think, weird perception of time that we really focus on the now. And that makes it really easy to kind of favor comfort over everything else, or, ease over everything else.
Definitely. When you were talking about that, when that feeling when things are bad and it feels like it's going to last forever, I love that example from Dare, where he's talking about like the Lieutenant Dan moment where he's on the boat and he's just like cursing in the storm. And he's just like, "Bring it on! Give me! Is that all you got?"
Yeah. It is. It's funny, the other thing too, I think is being honest with ourselves too. I think a lot of people struggle too because they're not honest with other people either. Even like, and not that you don't have to be honest with everybody, like even having a few people where you really have like really like talk to, really are honest about how you're feeling, really honest about how things are going, and like actually engaging in like real conversations like that. I think a lot of people don't have that in their lives. Like, I mean, I think that's why this has been so helpful. Like, I'm grateful I have you in my life because we can actually have honest conversations. But I think that's a hard place to get to. We're worried about how other people are what they're gonna think of us, whether they're gonna think we're weak or a problem or whiny or what, I don't know, who knows. And it makes it hard. And we also don't want to upset people. So we don't want to bring things up either when we see it. And I think, it's a difficult place to get to, but once you get to it, I think like, you elevate that relationship to a level that like, is far beyond any normal acquaintance or relationship you may have.
That's so one of the things that I struggle with honesty with other people is, do I be honest or do I be kind? It's like,
Right.
that's like the hardest thing, because I'll be talking
Yeah.
with them and they'll ask something of me and I'll be like, okay, do I be honest or do I be kind? And because the answers are different, at least that's as far as I've come in this point in my development, where like the answers are totally different, being honest.
Can you give an example?
let's
Doesn't have
just
to be a
say
real
let's
example,
just
which is
let's
like an
just say
example.
like
Yeah.
let's just say for the guys listening, a female that you may be involved with asks how she looks in something. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Honest,
Yeah.
kind. Or like, does my butt look big? Honest, kind. And I mean, those are some examples, but also there's so like another thing is correcting people when they make mistakes. Okay.
Yeah.
So like a lot of self-development books, maybe not a lot of them, but like I think it's how to win friends and influence people. It recommends not correcting people. Okay, you're not exactly being honest, especially if they ask you
Yeah.
about it. Especially if they ask you
Yeah.
about it and you don't correct them. You're not exactly being honest, but is being kind and is developing a relationship. So, what's more important?
I would push back against that though, because you know what? Like, I did find, okay, so I will say this from experience, like teaching and stuff, when like commenting on students' work, like it took me a while to learn how to do that effectively, where it was both one helpful but also like accurate, and without being like sounding mean or without coming off in a way where like this is all terrible. Like, you know what I mean? Where like it would just totally
This
make
is
somebody not want to.
garbage.
Yeah, yeah.
It
Because
sounds
you
like
want
this is your first time taking this course. You should take it again.
figure this out. So I think like, I think that's, part of it is kind of maybe like practicing in a way, or finding how to say things in the right way, like as if you were talking to yourself or to a friend or something. Like, is there a way to offer the constructive criticism without like making it about the person, or making it about their faults specifically in a way. And I think it's hard. It is hard sometimes because, the initial thing you recognize is like, this is bad, or this, whatever. And then, it makes it difficult. But
Yeah. And
but
also,
anyway, I was going to say, I
getting
think,
the timing right.
yeah,
Is this the
that's
right
good.
time to be being honest? That's another thing.
Yeah. Are they ready for it?
Yeah.
Are they at the point where they're ready for it and open to it? But I was going to say, I think, with building relationships, I think kindness is good, but I think also like, it is important to have like constructive criticism and to have like a back and forth and a open areas for growth in a relationship too. So I don't think that's a good way to approach all relationships. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Just
So
don't say anything ever.
it kind of comes it kind of comes back to the whole idea where like the truth is not, there's not a truth. It's kind of like very
Yeah, that's the
subjective.
problem.
Very
Well,
subjective.
everything's a degree, right? Everything matters a degree. Everything depends on so many different. Everything is very complex, right? And I think that's part of the issue, which is also why it's hard to be honest. I think, you know, it's very difficult because of this.
So there's a couple like very extreme honesty practices. Like in the way of integrity, Martha Beck was talking about how she basically went on like a year only honest type of thing. And that's like, whoa. And then there was another
I
book I
would like to
read.
know how diligent she was.
Dude, you should read the
How
book.
much
It's like,
I gotta read the rest of it. Yeah,
her life
was it?
changed. Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
changed. And there was another book that I read a while back called, I think, Radical Honesty. And it's basically this group of people who practice being blatantly honest, like not even contemplating honest or kind, like the answer is always honest. And I remember hearing that a while back when LSD became illegal, there were communes who would practice radical honesty because they found
Oh
the
yeah, I
effects
did.
of that just as transformative as taking LSD or other hallucinogens.
Well, think about it, right? Because part of being a social animal is wanting to be a part of the group. And that motivates us, right? To want to fit in, be nice, be friendly, to not point things out, to not cause problems, to do all these things that are really contrary to maybe what we think or what's actually going on. And like you said, too, there is no one truth. So the other problem is that just saying everything that comes to the top of our heads, while it may be what we're thinking right now, it still might not be accurate. And it might not be honest in the sense that it might not matter, or we might not be thinking of it from the other perspective, or we might not have the situation right, the facts right. So there's a lot of reasons why, like, I think just saying whatever the hell comes to your head might be honest in the sense of what you're thinking, but it's not necessarily right either. I think that's maybe that's also part of the problem is like, so maybe what does it mean to be honest? It's another issue.
That's
This,
a yeah, that's a great one. Who knows?
I think focusing on like honesty with oneself is a good place to start because you should know yourself. It forces you to be more self-aware, and it also makes you more aware of what you're doing and helps you with interactions with others. I think that's a good place to start because you know more about yourself in your situation than theoretically, right?
Yeah. And a great question to ask is, where am I lying to myself?
Yeah.
Because that's like the perfect place to start.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, even journaling that can be helpful too. Is like, like if you find yourself wanting to do something or having, and trying to be honest with yourself, writing it down, why do I want this? Why am I telling myself this? Is this really the case, or am I just trying to like make it easier? All these things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a difficult topic.
It
Do you want to add
certainly
anything
is.
else
I
on
mean,
honesty?
there are some benefits. There are some clear benefits of honesty, and there
Yeah,
are
yeah.
some clear disadvantages. But maybe they're just challenges associated with it. It's one of the because honesty is a virtue, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and virtues you can't perfect them, so you just have to like
What?
strive to do very well.
To be better, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think too, I don't know. I do think striving for honesty though is good for our own good lives too, though, because it's about knowing also like what you want, being honest with yourself about what your values are, about what you believe, about what you think is important. All of those things can help you stay on a path where, like, you don't run into problems that your friend ran into, right? Where you have this sort of contradictions within yourself. You're consistent with yourself and how you live. And I think that is very important too. And that can be, that can be challenging too. It all presents challenges because we live in a complicated world of other people, and it makes it hard.
Yeah. I do think that I would say that there are very clear benefits of living as honest as possible. Like
Yeah.
the times in my life where I had the most internal struggle, negative mental attitudes, things like that, is when I was not being honest with myself.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it sometimes it involved other people where I wasn't being honest with them as well. But once that was cleared up, then there's like a peace that comes about. Like you just sleep really well. You don't worry about stuff. And it's just like if you're not there yet, look for where you're not being honest, because that's probably the key.
No, I think you're right though, because I think success in a good life, you have to be honest in order to truly have them. And you will sleep better because no matter what happens, you did what you should have done, right? You were who you are. There was no falsity. There was no, inauthenticity. Like you were authentically you. And I think that's what the whole point of being honest is, right? Being your authentic self. And that's a good place to be, but it's difficult.
Yeah. So I was thinking we should make a couple recommendations for how to uh, be honest with yourself. I was just going to say
Okay.
Wim Hof breathing. Like I started doing this 10-week thing. I'm 7 weeks into it, and it's like transformative. No joke. It like
I gotta look this up now. I'm
yeah.
gonna check it
I'll
out
share it
after.
with you. It's like absolutely transformative. It gets you to that point where everybody wants to be in meditation. Like you know why everybody gets into meditation and then they quit because meditation's hard. Wim Hof
Yeah,
breathing
yeah.
gets you there day one. Like
Wow, that's awesome.
10 minutes
Yeah,
and you're there. And it's
that's
like
cool.
you can access that every day. And so yeah, I was because I doing that is has brought a lot of clarity into, I guess, my life recently. And I think that's why the honesty thing came up, because I started looking at where am I lying to myself.
No, that makes sense. I think, it's nice to have clarity too. And I think you kind of sometimes need to, like, meditation is really helpful too, because it gives you that time to sort of just sit and do this thing and think in a way that you don't normally think, right? Or allow your thoughts to go in a way that you don't normally allow. And it helps get that clarity. Yeah, I think it's a good one. I would also say too, I think trying to be more self-aware about the reasons we give ourselves for doing things. Like being more conscious about, like, okay, why am I doing this? Am I just responding to being uncomfortable? Is it really what I want? Is it, am I just making excuses? Like trying to be really honest with yourself. You don't have to necessarily like abide by it, but like at least start being aware of it. Cause I think that's a good starting place, and yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Yes, I do.
that's a great one. And doing it with a journal is a great way to do it too.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
like when you were mentioning that, it brought me back to the conversation I was having with this person who's doing the illegal stuff. And I was like, I said to him, I was like, I know you're having money problems right now, if you didn't have these money problems, would you be doing this? And he thought about it, and he's like, no. And I was like, so like, why don't we address the money problems first? Because there's a very clear lifestyle problem where his expenses are through the roof, and he just, like, anytime he has money, he just blows it. So he just nonstop gets into these things, and now he's going to do illegal things to try and basically
it's a quick
try
thing,
and
right?
out earn his stupidity is basically what he's trying to do. And so so it's, but like, being able to sit down and look at our own issues and try and figure out exactly what it is, because oftentimes we're trying to put band-aids on a huge problem. Like, I remember I was doing that for a long time. I avoided my student debt for 10 years.
Oh, hell yeah.
I was like plugging a hole with my finger and being like, I just need to out earn this somehow, like instead of just paying it off as much as I could and living below my means as much as possible, I was like, no, I have to come up with some crazy scheme in order to do this. And so.
Well, no, I think money is a principal area where a lot of people do end up lying to themselves, and they do end up doing things they otherwise normally wouldn't do, or staying in jobs they hate, not making change in their lives they should make because they're that fear or that need or that stress associated with money. And so personal honesty can really help you, I think, in those areas as well, and get clarity on what you should be doing. It doesn't mean, but the difficult thing too is being honest with yourself doesn't mean that that's going to be the easier solution. I think oftentimes when we're honest, it's the harder path that we have to take, and that's what makes it so difficult, right?
Yeah. I'm laughing because when you said that, I remember this experiment they did where they basically took a bunch of monkeys and they taught them about money. And so they basically gave them money and taught them that they could trade this money for bananas. Okay.
Oh, okay.
The first two things the monkeys figured out to do was prostitution and violence.
The fastest means to get it.
I know, right? Oh, jeez.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's like, but I think that's it's I think with that too, I think at least one last thing I'd point out too, and journaling helps with this, but really trying to get honest about what your values are, what you value, what you want, what's meaningful to you, and that is, I know that's a big thing and like maybe very difficult, and maybe even a lifelong project, but trying to get there, because that can really help too, I think, when we're faced with situations. Knowing what we value can be a very helpful guide or way to make decisions that are more consistent with the honest decision.
That's true. And I think one key for getting there to figure out what we value is, like, what do you want? And then just giving yourself the freedom to be like, okay, I can have that. Because like I think a lot of us want things and then we're like, no, you can't have that. Everybody wants to be a billionaire, but they're like, no, I can't do that.
Or you're not good enough, right?
Why
you're not smart, whatever.
Why not? And then once you get to the point where you allow yourself to be a billionaire, start figuring out, why do you want to be a billionaire? Like, you really want a billion green printed pieces of cloth? Like, why?
Yeah. And it often comes with more headache. It's funny when you mentioned that too. That reminded me of one of the biggest things that's an impediment to our own sort of living the life that we should be living, or being honest, is also like the self-concepts we have, right? The ideas of ourselves being an imposter, not being the type of person that could do that. And you gotta realize that anybody doing something that you see that you want to do, they're just people too. So you can totally do it. And I think but learning to see yourself like that is really important. Being able to imagine yourself as that type of person or in that life is crucial. Yeah.
And realizing that imposter syndrome gets everyone.
The
author of the book was talking about it in this book on bow hunting, Endure, how like he's had all types of imposter syndrome where like all of his successes, he's always like, who do you think you are? You grew up from this small town, nobody. Now all of a sudden, and like that's part of the reason why he works so hard, is because he's like, if I don't, that's where I'm heading. And he even he's become friends with Joe Rogan, and he's spoken with Joe Rogan about it. And Joe Rogan, even at the level that he is, still encounters imposter syndrome. signs a $200 million podcast deal and still encounters imposter
Doesn't think
syndrome.
he's good enough, right? Or doesn't think, and it's funny. I think that's true. Everybody experiences it, but you just have to learn to break through it and keep going, because it can be a huge wall and a huge barrier. So, That's a good one.
Yeah, I think that's about
Anything
all.
else?
No.
All right, we'll stop here. That's good. That's good. Thanks for listening. We'll be back later with a quick fix. Be sure to check it out. Check us out on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast, like, subscribe, share, that. If you haven't had, yeah, share, do all that stuff. It's helpful. And be honest with yourself. Until that note, later, Randy.
Later, Danny.